love Resident Evil. Other than the first Spider-Man movie tie-in game and Frogger on the PlayStation, this was one of the first video game series that I was exposed to. I was 7 or 8 years old hanging out with my cousin, and he asked me to play the game for him while he went to do something. So it was just me and Resident Evil 4, mano a mano. And my only objective was to survive until he got back. Of course, I tried for about a solid 25 seconds, then got scared and ran away. And that experience stuck with me. But we're not here to talk about the Resident Evil game everyone's talked about a million times over. We're here to talk about the curious case of Resident Evil Code Veronica. Is that a missile out there? You might be asking yourself, why is this a curious case? Well, let me tell you, my fellow viewer. Sitting there with your drink and your food. Yeah, I'm talking to you, that's right. Resident Evil Code Veronica was released 23 years ago in the year 2000 for the Sega Dreamcast. Wait, 2000 was 23 years ago? I'm getting old. The game was directed by Hiroki Kato and written by Noboru Sugimura. It was the first Resident Evil to release on a console other than the PlayStation, and birthed solely by the fact that the producer of the series, Shinji Mikami, was unable to port Resident Evil 2 to the Sega Saturn. So they opted in to create an original title for the console. So here's where the curious case of Code Veronica gets curiouser. As they began developing this new Resident Evil, which would end up being Code Veronica, it was being created with the original intention of being the next installment in the series following Resident Evil 2, obviously making it Resident Evil 3. Shinji Mikami and his team ended up asking for more time to develop the Resident Evil game for the Sega platform, and ended up changing the original plan to release it on the Sega Saturn, and decided to develop it for Sega's new console, the Sega Dreamcast. Now, the next part here to Code Veronica's origin is where I've read a few different stories as to how Code Veronica ended up being labeled a spin-off. But the one consistent thing in these stories is that Capcom wanted to keep its mainline number series exclusive to the PlayStation consoles, so Resident Evil 3 being developed to be a spin-off to the events of Resident Evil 2 ended up donning the name Resident Evil 3, while Code Veronica ended up being the spin-off. A little crisscross, all chalked up to a marketing decision. Now, even with all my love of Resident Evil and my first ever video on this channel being a Resident Evil 6 review, I have never played Resident Evil Code Veronica. Oh. I was expecting people to throw stuff at me. This game has the reputation nowadays of people thinking it's overrated, and some people thinking it's the best of the tank-controlled era, with some even saying it was the start of the goofier, more action-oriented direction the series took afterwards. I chalk never playing up to never owning a Dreamcast until around now, and by the time Code Veronica was ported to other consoles, which was barely over a year later, I wasn't that interested. Granted, Code Veronica was a console seller for the Sega Dreamcast, outselling the likes of Shenmue within its first week of release and being hailed as the best game on the console alongside Soul Calibur. So I think it's about time I buckled down, put on my Made in Heaven vest and grabbed my Samurai Edge, and finally checked out Resident Evil Code Veronica. We begin Resident Evil Code Veronica with a narration telling us our current events take place 3 months after the events of the virus outbreak in Raccoon City. We see our main character, prisoner WKD4496, Claire Redfield, voiced by Allison Corr, who appears to have been kidnapped by Umbrella. Claire's then uncuffed and knocked out. I don't really see a point in doing that, as we cut to 10 days ago. Hold on. Let me grab my calendar so I can keep track of where we are. 10 days earlier, Claire had infiltrated Umbrella's Paris base searching for her brother, the GOAT, Chris, who's better and way cooler than Leon, don't at me. In a super cool cinematic where if you're like me and haven't played the game, you've definitely seen this cinematic one way or another. Claire attempts to escape the base running from a helicopter's machine gun fire as she... I surrender! Claire does a drop shot that would rival any veteran Rainbow Six Siege player shooting a flammable container, blowing away the guards. She's unfortunately captured afterwards and reawakens back to the present in her cell. Shortly after coming to, a man shambles in, opening the gate, letting Claire free, stating the prison's been taken over. Claire begins making her way through the complex, and I have to say, this opening here, walking around with a lighter, illuminating the walls, the ambiance is perfection. You know, it is awfully quiet though for a complex that's been taken over. There we go. Zombies begin quite literally sprouting out from the ground as Claire's forced to make a run for it due to her only carrying her extraordinarily powerful knife with no other way to fend off the dead. Right as she escapes, Claire undergoes heavy machine gun fire, but luckily enough, grabs a handgun off the ground, taking out the spotlight and machine gunner.
Wait, don't shoot.
This machine gunner is everyone's least favorite character in the Resident Evil franchise ever, Leonardo DiCaprio. The two exchange names with Steve just kind of being a creep.
Claire. Nice. I'll remember that.
Yeah, I'm sure you will, squirt. The two of them both realize they're prisoners to Umbrella as Steve points out there's an airport nearby that they can both use to escape the island. Yeah, because if there were any safest ways to travel by in the Resident Evil universe, it's definitely by plane. Not that boats have had that much of a success either. Claire begins exploring more of the complex as she runs back into Steve, finding out Umbrella's been monitoring her brother Chris. Claire sends a message to Leon regarding this new information and takes Steve's joking suggestion literally and sends coordinates to them for help.
He won't come. You'll just end up disappointed if you rely on others. Believe me, I know.
Which pisses Steve off for some reason. Dick.
What was that all about?
Claire, exploring more of the island, stumbles inside of a mansion. Or manor? Maybe an estate. Inside the mansion, Claire sees a weird-ass video of two psycho kids. One of them plucks the wings off a dragonfly and drops it into an ant farm as the two of them just way too much eye contact. I'm on that weird side of YouTube again, aren't I? Claire hears Steve cry for help and saves him from a signature Resident Evil Mansion death trap where we make a deal to trade the Lugers he's found for something more automatic.
Let's make a deal. I'll trade you for something fully automatic.
Stop pointing it at us, man! Claire continues back to the main staircase where she waits way too long to move out of the way of a laser sight on her, and we meet Alfred Ashford, commander of the complex.
Redfield! How dare you interfere with my operation?
What are you talking about?
Alfred asks Claire who she's working for, seeing as the base was attacked shortly after she arrived, while also revealing that an experimental strain of the T-virus was released in the attack. But Claire only feels like shit talking to this goofy laughing redcoat.
Oh? You must be one of Umbrella's lower level officers if you're in command of a backwater base like this one.
Claire continues through more of the Umbrella base, eventually being trapped with Alfred's experimental abomination cross of a banana Laffy Taffy with a tyrant. Claire takes the monster down only for it to spring back up, taking her by surprise. All seems lost as Steve straight up devil may cries his way through a window, unloading into the monster. Yeah, no jokes here. That was just legitimately badass.
Oh yeah, that felt good.
Okay, never mind, you ruined it. Claire and Steve make the exchange they promised earlier, as Claire helps Steve get ammo for his machine guns in a way that many would kill to have happen to them, with Claire using Steve like a step stool.
Ow! My back!
The platform they're on suddenly sends them lower into the island's facility as we take control of Steve as he joins Claire to help clear out the zombies.
Time to test out my new toy!
After mowing down the hordes of zombies, Steve lets Claire know the coast is clear as he insists she can count on him.
See? You can depend on me.
Look, I'm not saying I don't trust Steve, but he's the type of kid I'd befriend for my own safety, if you catch my drift.
You see? This thing is a lot more reliable than any person.
After traveling to another level of the complex, the ground beneath them gives way, pinning Claire as a zombie emerges from behind Steve. He freezes, screaming that he can't shoot the zombie as it makes its way towards a pinned Claire, and right as it's about to take a bite out of her, he unloads into the zombie's screaming father. Steve falls to his knees, finally coming clean to Claire, explaining that his father, while working for Umbrella, tried stealing information from the company. In the end, after getting caught trying to sell said information, his mother was killed, with Umbrella having this whole family locked up on the island for his father's carelessness. Steve, I'm sorry. I take back what I said. I'd be friends with you even if you weren't a gun nut. Oh, and we see Umbrella's attempt at making a blobfish look like it legitimately has an ass for a face. Returning back to the upper floors of the mansion, Claire finds— Why is this video everywhere? God, these kids are freaks! Claire finds a secret passageway hidden behind a bookshelf. However, as soon as it opens, our piss-colored monster dives through the window, ready for round 2. He chases Claire through the passageway, leading Claire to find another mansion. Okay. Someone's been watching a little too much Halloween Town. Upon entering the mansion and exploring its floors, Claire hears a woman in a room speaking with her brother, telling her to continue searching for the girl. Through their conversations, we hear Alfred address her as Alexia as they reveal their plan to revive the Ashford legacy.
I am aware of that, Alexia. I will revive the family name myself and make you the master of the glorious Ashford family.
Alfred and Alexia, huh? Okay, I think I'm starting to put this together. Claire's almost caught, hiding out of sight before continuing off on her journey. Finding some medicine, returning back to her cell she was released from at the beginning of the game, Claire gives some medicine to the man who freed us from our cell earlier, and in return, he gives us a lockpick. Thanks, it's what I've always wanted. Claire heads back to the mansion right as she's about to enter. Oh, it's Wesker. Oh shit, it's Wesker! Wesker reveals he was the one who attacked the island. All to lure in Chris, and Claire will make the perfect bait to make that happen, as Wesker leaps away using his new powers. Digging further into the mysteries of the mansion, Claire is snuck up on by Alexia from earlier as she holds her at gunpoint as the two finally meet face to face. Steve walks in right before Alexia shoots, and the two exchange shots, injuring one another.
Ah, Steve!
Alexia escapes as Steve and Claire follow suit. After entering a hidden room within that room, Alfred leaps at them from above, showing his face in the same makeup Alexia was wearing as Claire puts together that there never was an Alexia, as Alfred has been dressing up as Alexia pretending to be her, revealing some sort of split personality syndrome.
What just happened?
As Claire and Steve make their way through the courtyard, an alarm begins to sound stating that a self-destruct sequence has been initiated, as Claire and Steve rush to find an escape, boarding a submersible, taking them to a hangar where Claire goes to raise a bridge to allow their plane to take off. However, right as Claire raises the bridge, Alfred activates the remaining BOW to attack Claire, who looks much meaner than the ones from earlier. Claire, managing to take it down, rushes to the plane before the self-destruct sequence takes place, making it just in time. You know, it's usually points like these in Resident Evil games where the boss comes up. There he is! Oh, and he brought some cake! Claire does battle in the cargo hangar with this monster, sending its cargo crashing into it, knocking it out of the hangar where it explodes. Seems unnecessary, but hey, I don't mind. Right when you think it's over, Claire returns to the cockpit, only for the plane's autopilot to turn on, revealing Alfred is still alive, as the plane takes them to an unknown location. We now get a weirdly somber scene of Steve and Claire resting and napping with relaxing elevator-esque music playing. I don't think now's the time to have this relaxing scene. Their plane's been hijacked, taking them to an unknown... No. No! Steve, stop! Claire wakes up before Steve can creepily lay one on her as the plane crash lands in the Antarctic. Steve kicks out the doors, they hop down and... No, Steve, no, not again!
Oh, plane's trashed.
No shit, Steve!
Well, let's split up and find another way off this oversized freezer.
The two of them split up to find an escape once more as the two begin exploring Umbrella's Antarctic base. Claire finds a hidden room where... You sure I'm not playing Silent Hill? Claire runs back into Steve where they decide to use a tunnel boring machine to blast through the wall and reach a base that's 7 miles out. Okay, cool. We've got our plan laid out. Let's just...
Steve, watch out!
All right, Steve, that's 3 strikes, buddy. You're out! Steve, hitting a pipe releasing toxic gas, forces himself and Claire to leave the room, leaving them no other option but to come up with a new plan.
It's all my fault.
Oh, Steve. Come on, buddy. I mean... Yeah, it is. Claire reassures Steve that they'll be okay as they both split up to find the shutoff valve for the gas. After a bit of searching, Claire finds the valve, turning it off, only to be surprised by Alphalexia Ashford.
I shall enjoy watching you shriek in agony.
Once again in the nick of time, though, Steve comes bullet timing in, blasting Ashford as they flip over the railing. You know, that wasn't a very steep fall. They still might be... Okay, never mind, that'll do it. We then cut to Pyramid Head's cousin, Egghead, breaking free and now presumably patrolling the halls of the Arctic base. Claire and Steve return back to the TBM. Now the gas shut off, begin tunneling their way out of the base.
Go for it!
Hey Steve, I don't know about you, man, but that's a lot of water. The two of them escape and climb up to a helipad where the monster from earlier named Nosferatu knocks Steve off the platform, who's barely holding onto the edge. So Claire just tells him to hang out there while she fights Nosferatu. And after planting enough of Alfred's bolt-action rounds into him, Nosferatu goes tumbling and somehow Steve's still hanging on. Damn, Steve, what's your routine? Because you've got incredible upper body strength. Once she pulls him up, they spot a snowmobile and the two are off to the Australian base. However, back underground, we see an injured Alfred stumble into a room revealing that his sister Alexia awakens from having been kept in a pod this whole time, as tentacles sprout out from the ground, tossing Claire and Steve in their vehicle, as we fade to black. Wait, is that it? Are they dead? Because it sure looked like... Oh, never mind, it's him! Chris fucking Redfield! Chris scales the mountainside onto the island and begins his journey into the complex. Wait, what? I thought there was a self-destruct sequence. You're telling me there was a timer and not an explosion? He stumbles upon the men from earlier who let Claire out of her cells. Chris interrogates him for information of Claire's whereabouts. After telling Chris that she'd escaped earlier on one of the planes, the tremor from earlier comes back and swallows the guy whole. Huh. Chris battles the big old worm inside the caves of the mountain he scaled, and after a hard-fought battle, he... My brother in Christ, let the poor guy die already! As Chris descends further into the island, he finds a monitoring room with a weird live feed of Alexia singing to her deceased brother. It's revealed that Wesker is watching the same feed, and getting bored of Alexia's stream, finds out Chris is on the island and sends a hunter after him. And no, not the Left 4 Dead hunters, you goofballs, the Battletoad-looking ones. Chris's journey on the island is interrupted by none other than the man in black himself, Albert Wesker. With Chris demanding to know why Wesker is there, it's revealed that Wesker was sent there by a company to capture Alexia, with Chris deducing it was him who attacked the island. Chris goes to draw his weapon, but his Deadeye wasn't a high enough level, as Wesker hits him with a palm strike to make even the likes of Liu Kang jealous. Wesker picks up Chris by his neck, exclaiming how much he hates him, as Chris knocks his glasses off, revealing his eyes. Oh cool, I didn't know Wesker was a Stephen King fan. Alexia appears on screen, which entails a series of events that I find hilarious.
Alexia?
Okay, come on, that's funny, right? After finding out Claire's in the Arctic, Chris takes a jet from the island with a shot straight out of Tim Burton's Batman all the way there, where he finds his sister glued to a wall, and we get a long-awaited and heartwarming reunion between these two.
Chris. I missed you so much.
Alexia reveals herself just to insult them as we get this very cops-esque camera shot of Claire and Chris giving her chase. One of the tentacles bursts out of the wall, destroying the walkway Chris and Claire are on. That's like the 4th time that's happened in this game, separating the two and injuring Chris's leg. Chris yells for Claire to go. Jesus Christ! Why did she scream like that? I need a minute. Claire continues her search for Steve and finds him trapped into a similar machine that Nosferatu was in earlier. Claire is unable to free Steve as he explains that Alexia planned on doing the same experiments on him as she did on her father. Right after saying this, Steve starts crying out for help as he begins a gruesome transformation.
Help me! Claire!
Steve gives Claire chase, she barely makes it under a lowering gate. However, as she starts to catch her breath, one of Alexia's tentacles bursts out of the wall, squeezing her tight. What? What? I'm not making the hentai joke! Steve comes through the gate looking as though he's about to get the killing blow on Claire, but in the last second, he regains some of himself, freeing her. The tentacle retaliates, hitting Steve, sending him flying into a wall as he reverts back to his human form. Claire begs him to hang on, as Steve confesses his love for her as he passes away.
I'm glad that I met you. I love you, Claire.
Oh, God damn you, Steve! So, anyways. We cut to Wesker, who's confronting Alexia, demanding she comes with him as the last living sample of the T. Veronica virus exists within her. She deems him not worthy, which I'm not so sure about, as she... Ma'am, you're burning... Good God, sister, you're on fire! Alexia transforms, giving Wesker himself a run for his money as they give us a very Paul W.S. Anderson-style fight. One of Alexia's fire attacks barely misses Wesker, heading straight for Chris as he dives out of the way. Wesker takes notice of Chris and leaves him to deal with Alexia as he escapes. Thankfully, Chris has the ultimate weakness to Alexia's new form: bullets! Chris manages to hurt her long enough to escape further into the mansion as he runs past the door, hearing Claire crying on the other side. Claire tells Chris that Steve didn't make it as he tries to open the door only for it to not budge an inch. Give him another 8 or 9 years and he'll be able to take the door down with one hand while he crushes a protein bar with the other. Claire tells Chris that activating the self-destruct system should deactivate the security locks in all the doors, letting her out so they can escape. So Chris rushes to find the security system, activating the self-destruct sequence, releasing Claire.
You made it!
Of course.
The two siblings reunite once again, only for it to be cut short once more, as a massive worm creature spits Alexia out right before them. Chris and Claire run over to a locked weapons case, turning the two keys simultaneously, releasing the lock. Chris sends his sister away to escape while he deals with Alexia, grabbing the linear launcher off the wall, blowing her sky high. It's not over yet though, as Wesker has kidnapped Claire. Chris yells for Wesker to let Claire go and... Oh, he did it. That was easy. Wesker tells him that he's taken Steve's body because it still contains the living T Veronica virus, infuriating Claire. Chris insists that Claire leaves, as this is Chris's fight to deal with.
As a surviving member of STARS, I have to finish this.
I mean, not anymore, man. I'd say Claire's pretty involved in this fight now. Chris and Wesker go head to head, as Chris surprisingly gets his ass beat here. Now I know that in 5, Chris puts up more of a fight, but man, Wesker manhandles him here, only getting some sort of edge by dropping steel bars onto him.
Nice try, Wesker.
However, the destruction of the base separates the two of them, as they both stare each other down, vowing to settle things the next time they meet.
Next time. Until we meet again.
Wesker, you might wanna... No. Okay then. Chris and Claire take a jet, making a successful escape as the base and all the monsters on it go up in smoke. Claire asks Chris to promise that he'll never leave her again, but Chris says he can't promise it just yet, as they both have one last thing to do. Take down Umbrella as the two fly off and our game ends. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Resident Evil Code Veronica. So I'm entirely shocked at how much I loved this game, and it definitely feels like it was supposed to be a mainline number Resident Evil title. I'm someone who likes Resident Evil 3 probably more than the average fan does, but this game really surpasses it. In terms of scale, this game just feels so grandiose, like it was meant to be a turning point in the series. Having Chris and Claire battle the forces of evil together, I'd love to see that again. Now, this doesn't mean the game doesn't have its faults. The dialogue can be a bit goofy, and as I pointed out earlier, there are some scenes that feel like they were cut from Devil May Cry and used here instead. But I mean, Resident Evil's always had goofy line delivery and over-the-top moments. It's what makes it feel like Resident Evil. It's what gives it that signature style we all love. Now, there's some of you that think they took it a little too far down the road, which is entirely valid, but I still think this game is a must. And if you're like me and haven't played it yet, then what are you waiting for? Go give it a try. And as always, everyone, I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.